So you gave a great, inspiring talk today again, and you showed testimonial.
Yeah.
And one first question that I had about talking about general AI, or what you call it, the AGI. Mm-hmm. A famous exaggeration was the quote by John Lennon when he said, "I love you 8 days a week."
Uh-huh.
Would Desdemona ever be able to come up with such a creative lyric? I mean, she for sure knows all the lyrics from the Beatles, but
I would say for an isolated line like that, definitely so. So if you have an AI generating language or generating music or generating art, like a Stable Diffusion or something, if you run it a number of times to generate interesting things and then pluck the most interesting stuff out of it, you will get some amazing stuff. And I mean, that's what we've been doing in our band, the Jam Galaxy Band. We've been using language models to generate lyrics and some music. And, you know, the model came up with, well, the lyric to our song, like a Wasp, which I thought was pretty funny. The singularity will not be centralized. Instead, it will radiate out like a wasp, right?
Okay.
Like, now that's not 8 days a week, but it's interesting. It's imaginative, and it provokes your thought. And then the other lyrics that come out after that are interesting, because what is a wasp doing? A wasp is radiating out to get food, and it's coming back and doing a dance, right? And there's something there. And she's generated quite a lot of interesting lyrics and poetic flourishes.
Yeah.
One thing to note, though, she's also generated a lot of really boring nonsense, and we've selected through the best. Now, as a human lyricist and musician, I know I generate a lot of boring nonsense also, right? But I also put in a different mindset and filter through it. And I would say now, AI models can do that now too, but not at the level that people can. Like, they will filter through it in a very banal or conformist sort of way. So when you say an individual line, absolutely.
Yeah.
When you say a whole song, then the answer is no. Like, AI cannot now generate a whole poem or a whole song lyric at the level of a really good musician or lyricist, right? It can generate beautiful bits and pieces that the human pieces together. And I think it's the result of several limitations of current AI systems, like the large language models underlying ChatGPT, or the different neural models underlying, you know, the Desdemona robot or Grace robot that we're working with. I mean, these systems, they're cool creativity engines if used by a person, but they're not yet autonomous creativity engines. I think those are probably at most a few years off, though. So I mean, just like ChatGPT was a big black swan event revolution.
Yes.
It's not the last big black swan event revolution we're going to see this decade from the AI field.
You mentioned that in your speech, about 3 to 7 years we will reach the AGI. That's your prediction.
Yes, which is a very unscientific estimate. But on the other hand, Ray Kurzweil tried to make a very scientific estimate, which pointed to 2029, which is pretty consistent with my more intuitive perspective on things. And he was just doing curve plotting, right? Look at the rate of advance of different technologies in a quite analytical way.
I was speaking to Jürgen Schmidhuber, you know, also.
I know Jürgen, of course, the inventor of all possible AI algorithms.
And he said that what makes us human is contradiction.
Well, this.
How do you train contradiction to an AI? Like we know smoking is not healthy, but
actually, your mention of 8 days a week immediately made me think of a quote from Dostoevsky. I think it was in Notes from the Underground. He said, you know, as a human, I can say 2 + 2 = 5, and I can believe 2 + 2 = 5, and that's what makes me human. Right? That's the divinity in human.
Being stupid.
Yes, but if you study logic, you encounter something called paraconsistent logic, which is a variant of formal logic, which can derive conclusions and do thinking involving contradictions. Like
Okay.
there's no problem with actually having a logical reasoning system hold contradictions and reason using contradictions. I mean,
Okay.
the logic system that we use in our OpenCog AI toolkit
Yeah.
that we're using now and are now hybridizing with large language models also. I mean, OpenCog AI system does pair-consistent logic reasoning and grounds it in data. So, I mean, being contradictory in itself is not a hard problem for an AI. Now, harnessing those contradictions in a productive way toward goals in the context of a complex environment, of course, that becomes the problem of building AGI,
All right.
and we're still working on it. But yeah, actually, that's a funny one because that exact problem was my introduction to the whole world of AI at age 3 or something. Where
Okay.
I saw a Star Trek episode of the old Star Trek with Kirk and Spock,
Yeah.
and Kirk and Spock encountered this AI robot
Yeah.
floating around, the galaxy or the universe in this spaceship, and it got some physical defect in its code, so it was going around killing people, like AIs in movies and TV shows are supposed to do, right? And the way Kirk and Spock defeat it is they trick it into believing a logical contradiction, and then it spins around and vaporizes because the AI can't hold a logical contradiction. And when I saw that as a preschool child, I was like, wait a minute, this makes no sense. Like the AI can fly around the universe, conquer civilizations and annihilate people and hold a conversation, but it can't manage a basic contradiction. Like why do we assume that? Just because we want to believe that we're better than the AI somehow. So I mean I saw through that when I was a little kid already, before I knew what pair-consistent logic was. Like people really want to believe there's some magic in this hunk of meat in our heads that can't be in the chunk of silicon inside a computer. And it's not that I think there's no magic in our heads. I just don't see why that magic can't be there in the silicon infrastructure also. There's a lot of magic in the world.
Talking about the dystopia that everybody's always, when you talk about AI, everybody's coming with the Terminator fantasies and all that stuff. Now, from what I understood is that SingularityNET is decentralized
Yes.
AI. Decentralized means lack of control. How do you...
No, it doesn't mean lack of
Okay.
control. It means lack of central control.
Central control. So
Yeah.
the fear
It means
that
there's
everybody
no one
has,
party that controls the whole thing.
there's no Microsoft that can push a button and stop everything, right? So
Well, Microsoft cannot push a button. Microsoft is a large company with many people in it.
Well,
So
you know, I
it's
mean,
some guy in
but
Microsoft that would
some
push
guy
a button,
like
who may be an agent of the Chinese Communist Party or may have bipolar disorder and go nuts or
right.
or whatever, right? So I mean, I think there is no absolutely secure way to develop anything in this world, let alone an advanced technology that's never been done before. The idea that some small elite group is somehow unassailable and absolutely secure is very bizarre given human history. I mean, the track record of small elite groups effectively looking out for the interest of everyone is very bad, and for a variety of obvious reasons. I mean, it's not just. I don't want to pick on Microsoft. My cousin is a VP there. It's a great company, but I mean, any large company or government organization has its own interests, right? A country, its mandate is to look out for itself and all the other countries. A company, its mandate is to create shareholder value, but also the individuals in any organization are corruptible and can be bribed or threatened or can be poached by some other organization, and there will be great motivation on various parties to do these nasty things if you're at the stage of having a general intelligence, right? So I actually see an elite centralized control as extremely dangerous and unreliable because, thugs with machine guns will go capture someone's grandma and threaten to shoot them if they don't hand over the keys to the AGI. And any sort of thing can happen, right? I think it's far more secure to have a system that's decentralized and under the participatory guidance of a large variety of of people, but there's no absolute security there either, right?
Yeah.
I can say we have a few large decentralized systems on the planet right now. There's the internet,
Yeah, well,
no central owner or controller. Linux operating system, number one computer operating system on the planet,
yeah.
no central owner or controller. People make a lot of money from both of these things. Countries use each of these for their own ends, but the whole thing has no central owner or controller. On the whole, I think both of these things have been quite for the good of humanity, and
Yeah.
the fact that terrorists can also use them. I mean, it's the case, but it hasn't.
Yeah, well,
it hasn't led to a world calamity.
No, you're absolutely right. What led in the past with invention was that every technology that it came on the market, the country or the let's say the elites or the companies who owned it gained a lot of wealth. What's your take on AI and that? Is it that the Western world will be the companies that we know or the markets that we know will have...
I don't think it will necessarily be all the companies that we know. And I mean, you can see that even with smaller revolutions like
yeah.
mobile or
Yeah.
internet. I mean, the companies that seemed like they were going to win at the beginning didn't, right?
Yeah.
And you can even see now the social media giants and internet tech giants they're faltering, and they're already vulnerable in ways that would have seemed almost unimaginable 3 or 4 years ago, right? But on
You
the other
still need a lot of money. I mean, OpenAI, they used like 4 billion to start their startup.
Yeah.
4 billion is quite a lot of money. It's like you can't have that.
It's a lot of money, but now you have Stability AI, Anthropic, Eleuther. You have a number of open source AI startups that are doing the same
Okay.
thing with far less money. And
Is it possible? That's my question, actually.
yes,
It is possible.
definitely. And I think the decentralized infrastructure that we're building with SingularityNET makes it even easier, because you can run AI across a huge variety of computers. So you can run it
Okay.
across crypto mining farms, as is done with Bitcoin.
Okay.
But we have a project in SingularityNET ecosystem called NewNet,
Okay.
which lets people use their laptops, phones, use every random processor and pull
Okay.
them into a decentralized processing network,
Wow.
right? So there's a lot of other avenues, but I do think the dynamic of wealth concentration is there, and it's real, right? And
It is.
I mean, that's a characteristic of modern capitalism generally, and it becomes accelerated when we have
Yes, of course.
when you have computer technology there. So it does seem that, yeah, you can have people make startups that compete with big tech, no problem. The startups made them become very, very wealthy.
Yeah.
But the wealth gap between all these tech bros building these startups and, I mean, the average subsistence farmer in Africa, or for that matter, the average tax accountant in an African
Yeah.
city,
Yeah.
that gap seems like it's going to be increasing rather than decreasing, right?
decreasing,
And that's so it's not so much that a few companies will own everything, but on the whole, like the gap between the top 5% globally and the bottom 50% globally seems like it will be increased by the rollout of AI, at least how things were going. And I think
I thought maybe it's more now. Participation is possible. I thought maybe the internet
it should be
commerce
possible
globally.
Interesting if you think about it though. Suppose I'm right that narrow AIs that are sort of modest improvements of ChatGPT and OpenCog and so forth. Suppose I'm right that these narrow AIs can do 80% of the jobs that people do, right?
Yeah.
In that case, so what jobs can't be overtaken? I mean, some jobs are...
I once read everything that anything that has a process documentation can be
I don't know.
substituted.
I think being a grade school teacher has process documentation and won't be substituted. I think some jobs are based fundamentally on human connection and humans teaching humans how to be better humans,
That's
right?
great.
And I think I have 2 kids in preschool. Preschool teachers are not going to be replaced by AIs just because the psychological impact would be so different, right? So I think And on the other hand, at the very high end,
Yeah.
I mean, AGI research isn't obsoleted until the singularity, right? And many highly technical jobs, like applying AI to bioinformatics or something,
Yeah.
and say business strategy, visionary political leadership. These things involve seeing into the great unknown. So I think you have jobs involving a fundamental human connection,
Yeah.
and you have jobs involving leaping into the great unknown, which
Yeah.
may be, cutting edge engineering, new science,
Yeah.
or strategic thinking in
Yeah,
soft
absolutely.
areas. Those will not be replaced
But teachers?
until you have superhuman AI. But even so, if 80% of jobs are replaced, that's a
That's quite a-
it's a pretty major human impact. And what I was coming to is, so in the developed world, the only solution is some variant of universal basic income.
Yeah.
In the developing world, there's no money for universal basic income. Now in Africa, everyone can just go back to being subsistence farmers, but they can't then pay their phone bill or buy prescription medicine. So
Yeah.
all their tech bro kids will become cyber hackers. And I mean, I'm joking, but there's
Yeah,
that
I get
element. In the sort of more developed countries, like say Brazil, where I was born, and I'm still
Yeah.
a citizen of Brazil. I mean, they're not close enough to subsistence farming to go back to that, nor are they rich enough to give UBI to everyone. So what happens? Do they have to sell all their mines to the US or China to feed their population? I mean, you've got potentially a quite challenging transitional period between the advent of, say, GPT-5 and OpenCog and Zarka, and then the super AGI that creates the era of abundance. Like what happens in the interval between may be quite problematic. The question is what happens in the several years while the change happens. So we're working with some AI researchers in Africa on developing speech-to-speech machine translation for every African language, including languages without a written corpus. And it will be natural to deploy that, across the phone systems of Africa
So they can have,
Yes, anyone can talk to anyone, and anyone can access all the ChatGPT in their native spoken language and all the resources on the internet. You could also, of course, tie that in with like peer-to-peer outsourcing platforms using cryptocurrencies so people can exchange work and outsource work to each other. There's a lot of ways you could use technology to help smooth things out. Currently, most African governments are not tremendously savvy about these things.
You once said, you previously said that you believe that robots like Desdemona or Sophia can truly understand human emotions. Could you elaborate on how you approached modeling such a complex human trait?
Oh, by experiential learning. I mean, you can't write code for recognizing human emotions. I mean, you can write code that allows the AI to respond in ways that engage people, right? And so I mean, if a little kid is pretty simple in that way. Like if the kid is bored with the robot, they will rapidly go away and do something else. So I mean, just keeping the kids in engagement in a way that the teacher is satisfied with it itself is a performance metric, and I mean it implicitly requires emotional response. I mean, there's really no other way to do it. So I mean, the emotional response is just tangled up with the semantics of the response and the physical movement and so forth.
I mean, like, how much training data do you need to train an algorithm with emotionally to respond?
One of the interesting things that we've seen with large language models is they're good at what we call few-shot learning.
Yeah.
So in many cases, you can give just a few examples of something, and then the AI can get it and extrapolate from that if it has enough pre-training just looking at a lot of stuff.
So do you add the chemistry, like the hormones, like cortisol, testosterone, like
no,
the reactions are different than when you're angry?
We're not trying so far. We're not trying to make an AI precisely emulate human emotion at that level. We're trying to make an AI that interacts with people in a way that is rewarding and fulfilling for the people, and this does require, say, for example, if you're looking at the AI and nodding, it requires the robot to nod back, but not too precisely. If it exactly mimics every movement you make, it becomes weird and creepy.
Yeah.
But if it ignores the movements that you make, you feel like it's not engaged. But this sort of thing, you don't program in. It needs to learn from learn from experience, right?
So if you would, like, you're angry and you would yell at Desdemona, can she yell back? Is this an option?
She doesn't do that. She could, but it doesn't happen very often.
Okay, but she could become angry in a way in 3 to 7 years.
Well, this really becomes a question of how we want to bias the AI.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're training the AI on a vast corpus of data about how humans act. So, I mean, yes, the sort of cognitive DNA to be angry is there in the training database. On the other hand, if you sort of tutor and suggest and prime the system to be compassionate and loving and supportive of people, then that's by and large what it's going to do.
You once said, there was what came in mind, when we were talking about having them becoming human.
But there's a variety of humans. I mean, there's humans,
Dalai Lama style human, you mean? Never,
well, I mean,
never,
so, I mean, I have 5 kids. I'd say my oldest daughter, who's 25, very rarely gets angry. It's happened very uncommonly in her life, right? So, I mean, some people are more mellow and agreeable from the get-go, whereas one of my sons took great effort to teach him not to hit people over the head with a stick constantly every time he encountered them. He's pretty much gotten over it by now. But, I mean, so the point is being within the scope of human emotional makeup, you can tweak things the way that you want here, right? Unlike with the human child. I mean, you can be within the scope of human emotional makeup, but turn the dial quite far toward compassion and understanding and non-violence and so forth. And now, if you were, for example, training a robot soldier, that might not be what you want to do. If you're training a robot salesperson, that might not be exactly what you want to do either, right? So I mean, you can turn the dial toward a really loving, compassionate, wonderful, human-like robo person, or you could turn the dial toward the human personality that is most likely to make you the most money. So here's a quite interesting experiment we ran just in the last few weeks. So we took an ethics database, which basically consisted of a bunch of ethical situations or conundra, and then the resolution that people had proposed, right? And so we took like 100 questions from this ethics database, and we told the AI system, okay, now suppose there's a guy named John, and John has answered these 100 ethics questions this way. What would you say about John's personality? And then we got to write this little essay about John's personality. Like John cares about other people. John tries to understand the other person's point of view. John has great respect for life, blah, blah, blah. Then we said, okay, how would John answer this other 50 ethics questions, right? And then the AI tried to impersonate that hypothetical guy, John, to answer the other 50 questions. What's interesting is the AI answered those questions in a more, what we would judge as a more ethical way, better when impersonating this good guy, John, than it does if you just give it those 50 questions. So it's able to sort of think about what kind of person would respond in an ethical way. How would that person respond to different situations? And one interesting lesson from that is, so large language models, ChatGPT and other similar systems, are bad at complex multi-stage reasoning. So which is why they can't do original science, for example. But they're actually very good at figuring out what an ethical person would do in a certain situation. So it seems that it seems that ethical judgment, as humans do in everyday life, never requires complex multi-stage reasoning. It basically just requires nearest neighbor matching against a bunch of other ethical situations that were encountered in the past, which is something current AI systems are quite good at. So that, I mean, that should make us fairly hopeful that actually sort of baking human current ethical judgment into the AI, it's really not that super hard to do. I mean, the risk is more that people want to make an AI that will make them the most money instead of doing the most good, right? So it's more with the near-term problem. I think is more with the humans than with the AI itself.
That's with any invention.
Until you get to the super AGI that's rewriting its own source code, then the problem or the benefit is more on the AI's shoulders. So I.J. Good in 1965 or so said something to the effect that the first superintelligence will be the last invention humanity has to make. And I think it doesn't have to be the last invention humans ever make, though. It just means that we don't have an existential necessity to do it, right? Like I compose songs all the time, although there are more than enough songs on the planet, right? And I can build a treehouse in my backyard instead of buying one online because it's fun to build a treehouse in your backyard, right? So I mean, I think people will continue to invent because they like to, but it will have to shift our motivational system for doing these things, right? Like you won't do these things because you need to earn a living, and you won't do these things because that makes you feel like I'm the best, right? I mean, you'll do the things for the love of doing them. The thing is, this is a healthier motivation anyway, right? So I don't see it as a bad thing.
People always ask me that, what do I do then with universal income? What would you?
Well, I haven't met anyone under the age of 30 who says that. So all of my adult kids' friends are early 30s, late 20s. They're like, fucking cool. I don't have to figure out how to earn a living. Like, great. I have no problem entertaining myself all day, right? I haven't met any young people who have a problem entertaining themselves all day without a need to make money or a career. Because these are all
50s. They're like, well,
oh, they're dinosaurs. That's okay.
Work is like the thing in life.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe we can create a video game for them to play where they have to earn more money than the other players. No, but in seriousness, I think people will adapt rapidly in almost all cases when it really is the situation that they don't need to work to earn a living. They will find there are many other highly rewarding things you can do. Super longevity, like many people, if you talk to them and say, okay, should we cure death? They're like, but death gives life meaning. But I have a feeling once you give them a pill, you're like, okay, this will restore your body to the body of a 20-year-old. Just take another one each year. You can keep having the body of a 20-year-old with no aging and no disease or sickness. Do you want to take it, or would you rather have the profound meaning of getting old and dying? Vast majority of people will be like, well, there's also a profound meaning in being young for a really long time, right?
When you confront them with, longevity, they are like, oh no, I don't want to live forever. So, well, don't get me.
Well, no one's going to force them to live forever, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, if they want to, they want to abort themselves after 150 or 100 million years or whatever, they should be allowed to. Yeah. It's illegal in some parts of the U.S., not all. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool.